Good evening, everyone. Please rise in body or spirit and sing along with me. It's beginning to look a lot like Christmas everywhere you go. Take a look at the 5 and 10, glistening once again, with candy canes and silver lanes aglow. It's beginning to look a lot like Christmas. Toys in every store, but the prettiest sight to see is the holly that will be on your own front door. A pair of apple buttons and so the sheets to wish your body and Jen. Those little tiny little walkers, the hope of Janice and Ben. And Mom and Dad can hardly wait for school to start again. It's beginning to look a lot like Christmas everywhere you go. There's a tree at the Grand Hotel, one in the park as well, the sturdy kind that doesn't mind the snow. It's beginning to look a lot like Christmas. Soon the bells will sound, and the thing that will make them ring is the carol that you sing when we live.
Merry Christmas, everyone, and welcome, Roomers and our Zoomers up here in our camera. So welcome to our Christmas Eve service here at Orange Coast Unitarian Universalist Church. I'm Reverend Sean Wilshire, if you don't know me, and I proudly serve this congregation. It's my pleasure to welcome you this evening, along with Beth Syverson, our Director of Music Ministries. We've got so many wonderful people that you can note, actually, on the previous slide, who made this tonight's service possible. And we also want to respectfully recognize that our church property rests on Ahashiman and Tongva land. Now, before I continue, Roomers, I invite you to silence your cell phones. Zoomers, you're invited to extend greetings in the chat. Now, tonight we're going to take a little trip down memory lane, and you will be invited, Roomers and Zoomers alike, to share some of your fondest memories of Christmas. Some of us have long-standing traditions in our families that we look forward to, or maybe we don't look that much forward to. And others have sweet memories of when traditions were born in your family or no longer a part of our lives. But all of these memories, I believe, make up the magic of Christmas. And one of our great traditions in this church is that later in the service, we name babies that were born this year. We name the babies that were born this year. As Roomers entered this evening, they were given a piece of paper that you can write the name of a child that you know who was born this year. And later in the service, I'll invite you to bring it forward. Or actually, the ushers will go around with a basket and they'll collect them for you and they'll bring those then forward to me. And Zoomers, you will then at that time, we'll invite you to put that in the chat. So I also want to remind Zoomers, if you want to join us in the lighting of candles that we do at the end of our service as well, to have a candle there at home. Don't forget something to light it with as well. All right. I hope you will also, the Zoomers, I hope you'll dim the lights so that you can also experience some of the magic of the moment. So let us begin our worship with the lighting of our chalice, where we always say together, love is the spirit of this church, and service is its law, to dwell together in peace, to seek truth in love, and to help one another. This we affirm together.
I'm remembering Decembers in the 'Twas the night. Oh, there we go. 'Twas the night before Christmas, and all through the house not a creature was stirring, not even a mouse. The stockings were hung by the chimney with care, in the hopes that St. Nicholas soon would be there. The children were nestled all snug in their beds, while visions of sugar plums danced in their heads, and Ma in her kerchief and I in my cap had just settled our brains for a long winter's nap. When out on the lawn there arose such a clatter, I sprang from my bed to see what was the matter. Away to the window I flew like a flash, tore open the curtains and threw up the sash. The moon on the breast of the new fallen snow gave a luster of midday to objects below, when what to my wondering eyes did appear but a miniature sleigh and 8 tiny reindeer. With a little old driver so lively and quick, I was sure in a moment it must be Saint Nick. More rapid than eagles his coursers they came, and he whistled and shouted and called them by name. Now Dasher, now Dancer, now Prancer and Vixen, on Comet and Cupid, on Donner and Blitzen. To the top of the porch, to the top of the wall, now dash away, dash away, dash away all. As leaves that before the wild hurricane fly, when they meet with an obstacle, mount to the sky, so up to the housetop the coursers they flew, with a sleigh full of toys and St. Nicholas too. And then in a twinkling I heard on the roof the prancing and pawing of each little hoof. As I drew in my head and was turning around, down the chimney St. Nicholas came with a bound. He was dressed all in fur from his head to his foot, and his clothes were all tarnished with ashes and soot. A bundle of toys he had flung on his back, and he looked like a peddler just opening his pack. His eyes, how they twinkled, his dimples, how merry. His cheeks were like roses, his nose like a cherry. His droll little mouth was drawn up like a bow, and the beard on his chin was as white as the snow. The stump of a pipe he held tight in his teeth, and the smoke it encircled his head like a wreath. He had a broad face and a little round belly that shook when he laughed like a bowl full of jelly. He was chubby and plump, a right jolly old elf, and I laughed when I saw him in spite of myself. A wink of his eye and a twist of his head soon gave me to know I had nothing to dread. He spoke not a word, but went straight to work, and filled all the stockings, then turned with a jerk, and laying his finger aside of his nose, and giving a nod, up the chimney he rose. He sprang to his sleigh, to his team gave a whistle, and away they all flew like the down of a thistle. And I heard him exclaim ere he drew out of sight, "Merry Christmas to all, and to all a good night."
Merry Christmas to all, and to all a good night. Memories of December, memories of Christmas. Well, a lot of people's first memories, at least as a child, about Christmas were around Santa Claus, right? In fact, the poem that Joelle just read was one of my first memories about Christmas. I think it was when I heard that poem that I really kind of understood who Santa Claus was. Up until then, I just sort of some vague person, but now I got a full picture of who this guy was and all of the reindeer and the sleigh and everything. And I remember wondering, was I naughty or nice? Was I nice enough? But I figured anyone who laughed like his belly was a bowl full of jelly would had to be a pretty nice guy, and that maybe the bar was a little low and I was going to be okay. I was a pretty good kid. I wasn't sure so much about my brother, though, because he constantly teased my twin sister and I kind of worried for him. But I remember wanting to put out cookies and milk like that was what you were supposed to do, right? But in my family, my mom didn't want us eating dairy or having too much sugar, so we had to settle for banana bread and water. I was a child of the 60s and 70s, tofu and the whole thing. So, at any rate, But I guess what I want to know is, what about you all? What are some of your first memories of Christmas? Was it Santa Claus? Was it caroling? Was it maybe a church pageant, a Christmas tree? What were your first memories? So I invite you, if you're a roomer, to turn to someone near you and share a memory. And for Zoomers, I invite you to write your memory in chat, and I'll call you back with the ringing of bells. So please, by all means, if you need to get up here in the room and go talk to someone, share a memory.
Well, I sort of remember went to a lot of trouble. There were 6 photo, so she would make maps so all the girls dresses, the same pattern.
Memory of Christmas was when my parents had like this, they like to get a big tree and decorate it with lights and all that stuff. And I would sneak down in the middle of the night, and then when I couldn't sleep and I was just too excited about Christmas, and I turn on the lights of the tree. It's pitch dark in the house, but I just turn on the lights of the tree and I just sit like either near the tree or under it, just looking up at the lights, just thinking like, I can't wait. And I was tuned out. So I remember doing that as a very little kid. Yes, of course. Yep. I was a nosy little kid, yes. Right, there was a ton of presents. Small, for you, it was just me and my brother, so they tried to make it even between us, but we're very different people, so that might be hard to do sometimes, and I didn't appreciate that until later in life. They tried their best. It turned out okay. The tinsel, I remember and I don't know if
I'd like to read a couple of the responses here in the chat for those of you, because you don't get to see it. A lot of people are on Zoom this evening. Bless you, brave souls, bearing the weather coming in here. Let's see here. So I have one person, my brother-in-law, says both a Christmas tree and really wondering how Santa fit down the chimney, right? That was always a mystery. Lynn G says, the memory is my brother and 2 sisters coming to join us and become my new brother and 2 new sisters right around Christmas time. Long story. Maureen says, for me, it was more about the baby Jesus. I was never told that Santa was real. Let's see here. Rika says, every Christmas Eve, my dad would suddenly have something to do, hanging laundry or returning a hammer to the neighbor. And just as he left, Santa would come. My dad would never miss a year. And Clover and Paul says, we love dressing as Santa and Mrs. Claus as handing out wee candy canes. They did that for years here at the church. Let's see here. Let's see, Robin says, going to see Santa at the Eatons and candlelight service. Yeah. So I hope you enjoyed sharing those memories. Let us sing.
When I was a little girl, my mother worked magic. I'm sure of this now, but at the time I could never figure it out. I was about 5 or 6 years old, living in a small apartment in the Chelsea area of New York City. It was just my mother, my older brother, and me. We didn't have a lot of money, but we had each other. I remember every year, the week before Christmas, the magic would begin. A tree would suddenly appear in our living room. Just a naked tree with no explanations and no decorations. No one would ever mention where the tree came from or how it got in our living room. And yet my mother and I knew it couldn't have come from Mom. After all, we were always together, and we never saw her go out to buy a tree. Where did it come from? I would say to my big brother Clyde as we stood side by side in our living room staring at it. It's almost like it just fell out of the sky. But the magic didn't stop there. The morning after the tree arrived, the first thing that we would do would be run into the living room, and there would be lights on the branches, and tinsel, and sprayed snow, and Christmas balls, and lights that bubbled. By now, we were watching our mom like a hawk, but we never saw her touch that tree. It had to be magic. Every day leading up to Christmas was just like that. We'd wake up, the tree would be decorated some more. Meanwhile, the living room windows were getting into the act. They gradually became decorated with pink stenciled snowflakes that looked like they'd been made with that cleaning spray stuff from the kitchen. Around this time, my brother and I would start thinking about our presents because we knew they were coming, of course. So before the big day, we would begin to look for them. We would look everywhere. Our apartment wasn't that big, so it didn't take us long to search everywhere. In the closets, in the bathrooms, under our beds. Nothing. Finally, Christmas Day would arrive, and my brother and I would get up while it was still dark outside, and some years it would be snowing outside, and we'd run into the living room and stop dead in our tracks. The sight was amazing. There was a bicycle, a flexible flyer sled, a Lionel train set, a Kate Greenaway dress for me, a Robert Hall suit for my brother. How did she do it? Where had all this stuff been hiding? At the neighbors? Under the floorboards? Or Mom had secretly been corresponding with the North Pole all along? You know, talking to Claus. After we opened our presents, we'd give our mother hers. We usually made things for her. She always seemed to love our homemade presents as much as the ones we loved receiving. Anyway, we never really had any time to think about it. We had to get outside. Usually there was about 45 tons of snow on the streets, so we'd get all dressed up in our snow clothes and head outdoors. My brother would take me to 10th Avenue, which by this time would be closed on account of the snow. He'd put me on the front of the flexible flyer, and then he'd sort of run and pull me along. We'd have the best time. At first, you could see nothing but clean white snow all around you. Then soon the streets would start filling up, not with cabs and buses like usual, but with kids and their parents. So much for the clean white snow. Still, as much fun as we had sledding and as wonderful as those presents were, the best thing for me is the memory of it all. I can still see every moment in my head. That was Mom's magic. By the way, when my brother and I got older, we finally asked our mother where the tree and all those presents came from. In fact, I still ask her. And you know what she says? I don't know what you're talking about. After all these years, Mom still won't give it up.
Oh, the magic of Christmas. So when I was little, I remember that Christmas can be that time of mystery and wonder for children. And when I was about 6 or 8 years old, this is actually about where I am here in this picture here, I spent about half of the year between ages 6 and 8 with my father and my stepmother, Judy, who's absolutely wonderful. We lived in a cabin in the Wallowa Mountains in eastern Oregon. And by a cabin, I do mean a cabin. This is a picture of it here. There's no running water, an outhouse for a toilet, no electricity, and the only heat was from firewood and stoves and fireplaces. It was on the edge of a private ski slope, so we had plenty of snow. We called the cabin Tipaza. It was the early 70s. That's what you did. You named your cabins and cars and everything. We also had 2 goats. You can see them there in the picture. Their names were Carrie and Shoshone. So that's me, my twin sister Regan, and my brother Kyer with the 2 goats on the cabin deck. One year we were there for Christmas time. We weren't always there for Christmas, but one year we were. And I remember being a little worried. Was Santa going to find us up in the mountains, out in the middle of nowhere, basically? But I remember my stepmother Judy said, you know, don't worry, someone will find us. Someone? Is that Santa? What did she mean? On Christmas Eve, we were instructed to take some straw from the goat barn and put it in our big galoshes boots that we wore and put the boots outside on the deck. I remember thinking, well, is this like a Christmas stocking? I didn't know. It was kind of a mystery, but that's what we were told to do. And the next morning, the 3 of us kids rushed to the deck door, and sure enough, there were our boots cold from the snow and the wind, but inside were treats and toys. And I remember especially a wonderful orange tangerine that was my favorite fruit and really hard to get at that time of year. Back then. Remember, we had breakfast, and then Judy announced that she needed to go for a walk alone. Again, a little bit odd because usually we all took walks together. A little while later, my father says, hey, who's that coming up the hill there? And we look out the cabin window, and they're coming up the hill, trudging in the snow. Is the strangest sight. There's someone in this sort of long, sort of flowing, golden, orangish robe. He's got this long gray beard and carrying a big sack on their back. And behind them trailed 2 goats. Now, wonderingly, this strange man came to the cabin and announced in a deep voice that they were one of the wise men, and they had come bearing gifts for us. I was a little suspicious. That beard did not look real. Was that Judy under all that costuming? I remember thinking, I'm going to blow this mystery wide open. Judy, is that you? No, I'm a wise man. Oh yeah, well where are the other 2 wise men? They had other cabins to visit. Okay, but where's your camel? I traded them in for the goats. Camels don't like snow. The goats looked suspiciously like Carrie and Shoshone, who should have been in the goat barn. I was skeptical, but I wanted to believe in that mystery and wonder of a wise man coming bearing gifts. And he did bear gifts. I got a beautiful new wool poncho. I remember it was beautiful blue colors with green and red in it. It was a wool poncho woven from a loom, which, wait a minute, Judy had a big loom in the other room that she used a lot. But I'd never seen this particular garment on there. It was all a mystery. And one I finally decided that I really didn't need to solve. I think that's one of the fun things that parents have is creating magic and wonder for kids. So what about you? Do you remember your parents creating any magic and wonder for you? Or did you do that for your own kids or your grandkids? How do you keep wonder and magic alive at Christmas? So you were invited, again, roomers, to turn to someone near you and talk about how you keep magic alive at Christmas. And same thing with the Zoomers. Zoomers, you can write in the chat. And I'll call you back with the jingle of bells. I'd like you to read you some of the responses online. Let's see here. We've got Sharon Lushy. Sharon Lushy said, Santa Cam, while we were in the children's program at Christmas Eve. We can never figure out how he did that, the Santa Cam. You guys remember the Santa Cam online? No? All right. Ask Sherry about that. Maureen offers up that love that happens at Christmas is often enough, and it sure is. Louis, my brother-in-law, he says what he tries to do is pass down the love of decorating the Christmas tree. That was a big deal also in our house. Rika offers up, she says her daughter Elise usually spends Christmas at her dad's, so she says we celebrate early Christmas. So Rudolph is the one who delivers presents to us, and for some reason he always comes through the bathroom window, slightly vandalizes the bathroom, and leaves presents for both of us. He always brings me exactly what I want, as if I picked it out myself. Angie says all the gifts under the tree are from Santa. The milk and cookies are gone in the morning. Yeah, you remember that? All right, let us sing.
City sidewalks, busy sidewalks, dressed in holiday style. In the air, there's the feeling of Christmas. Children laughing, people passing, meeting smile after smile, and on every street
The Stolen Infant by Reverend Carl Scoville. The Reverend Dr. Carl Scoville was a Unitarian Universalist minister for more than 45 years. 32 of them were at King's Chapel, a Unitarian Universalist Christian church in downtown Boston, living in the local parsonage. He wrote the following story about one Christmas many years ago when his children were young. I'd like to think that after many years of living together, our family has developed a certain sense of equilibrium, a certain ease with each other. From time to time, of course, the differences arise, and sometimes, occasionally, an act of outright rebellion. But as the reigning benevolent despot of the King's Chapel parsonage at 63 Beacon Street, I like to think that by and large, we get on very well. I don't pretend that all differences are resolved. For example, we have not yet come to complete agreement on just how warm a house should be. I grew up in a house without central heat, and I have always felt that a cool house is a healthy house, imperious to cold and conducive to the flow of blood. My daughters do not share that sentiment, and at times become articulate upon the point. Last Christmas, when I refused to turn up the heat sufficiently high to raise a winter supply of orchids, our younger daughter exclaimed, "Behold, a decree went out of Karl Augustus that all the world shall be frozen, and each went to her own room to be frozen." "Nonsense," I returned. "You're much better off than you are living here than in China or Russia." That Christmas Eve, we held our traditional services of song and scripture, but I added a small new feature. On the old communion table, we placed the crèche, terracotta figures of Mary, Joseph, and the child cradled in his mother's arms, shepherds, sheep, and kings as well. We never had a crèche at King's Chapel before, and I wasn't sure how people would take to it. I hoped that the muted colors of this terracotta figures might soften any Puritan objections. We went through the family service at 4:30, Holy Communion at 6, and the big service at 10:30 p.m. And I heard nothing but words of appreciation. I was relieved and thought perhaps we'd start a new tradition. I had finished greeting the crowd after the late service when our caretaker approached me with a worried look and said, "I think you better come down to the chancel." "What's the matter, Tom?" I asked. "One of the pieces of the crèche has been stolen." "Which one?" I asked. "The Christ child," he answered. Oh, Lord, I thought. Here we put out this for the first time, and As we walked down the aisle of the church, I couldn't help wonder who would take such a piece. A drunk? A nut? An objector? A prankster? We got to the chancel and looked at the creche, and sure enough, the baby was gone. I looked under the table and around the chancel floor, nothing. Then back to the creche, and I saw the edge of a tiny slip of paper protruding from beneath the figure of Mary. I drew the paper out and found the following message printed neatly in pencil. "We've got Jesus. Turn up the heat at 63 Beacon Street and you can have him back for the morning service." The heat went up at Parsonage. The infant reappeared, and everything returned to normal. Well, not quite. The benevolent despot of 63 Beacon Street sits still, certainly upon his throne. That is probably not surprising. No monarch, indeed no despot, can ever be sure of his rule when the child has been born.
I love that, only at a Unitarian Universalist church. So I didn't grow up in a church at all, although I remember there was this one time when I was about age 11 or so. My twin sister and I had best friends that were twins too, and they belonged to a Baptist church, and somehow we got roped into being part of the pageant that year. And I don't remember a whole bunch about it, but except for that Regan and I were angels together, the twins. I think they thought that was cute. And we had one line that I remember, which was St. John 3:16, "For God so loved the world, he gave his only begotten Son, whosoever shall believe in him shall not perish but have everlasting life." And to this day, I still remember that one Bible verse. But I didn't really know what that meant. The whole story seemed a little bit odd to me, right? Like everybody seemed to be focused on this doll that we were using for the baby Jesus, who all just kind of lay there and we were all looking at it supposedly adoringly. He didn't really do that much. I couldn't quite figure it out. All in all, I wasn't really that impressed. And I'd heard about Christmas services and, TV shows and heard about them from other people, but I realized actually just a few years ago that I had never attended a church service before until I came to a Unitarian Universalist church. And I remember my first church service as an adult. I loved it. It was so beautiful. We sang Silent Night at the end, holding candles like we do here. And I loved the stories that we tell that sort of made sense of Christmas in a way that didn't insult my intelligence and brings mystery and wonder to the world. It's still my favorite service. I love the mystery, the wonder, the beauty, and the joy. I love the magic of it. The spirit of Christmas, all that permeates this time, and the music and the stories. Christmas services are always filled with hope and joy, and probably you could actually go to almost any church and have it filled with hope and joy. There's something magical about this. But what about you? What are your memories of church Christmases? Even if tonight is the very first time you've ever been to a Christmas Eve service, what magic called to you on these holy nights? Roomers, again, I invite you to turn to someone near you, maybe someone new. You can get up and leave it, walk around if you like. And Zoomers, feel free to write in the chat as you have been doing. And I'll call you back. I'll read you some from the chat. So Lynn says, we went to an evening service with carols and we would each get a candle and compete to see who could keep the candle lit on a windy night on the way to the car afterwards. And Rika says, I'm a bit ashamed to admit that what called me to midnight mass in Germany as a teenager, young adult, were not just the carols, but also the fact that after the service, the church would give out free hot spiced wine. Maureen says, I remember the beautiful Christmas music. I remember that too. Oh, Ava says, I couldn't wait to see what Beth did with Remembering Decembers, and when I saw it and saw she used the pics of my family, I burst into tears. Good memories. And Lewis says, watching Christmas Mass televised from the Vatican was probably Pope Paul in the 70s. Love it. And Robin says, midnight candlelight service always ended with a man named Mr. Moon who would be up on the balcony behind us all. He was an amazing tenor who sang O Holy Night. Oh, that's beautiful. So let us sing some beautiful music.
Let's rise in body or spirit. Angels we have heard on high, sweetly singing o'er the plains, and the mountains in reply, echoing their joyous strains. In excelsis Shepherds, why this jubilee? Why your joyous strains prolong? What the gladsome tidings be, which inspire your heavenly song? In excelsis in excelsis From to Bethlehem and see, Him whose birth the angels sing. Come adore on bended knee, Christ the Lord, the newborn King. In excelsis
Before I invite Tom up here to speak, this is that time when I invite the roomers to write down the name of a baby that was born this year. And after Tom speaks and Emilius begins playing, the ushers will come through and they will pick up any of those names that you have on the thing. If you need more, they have them. You just raise your hand if you need more slips of paper. And Zoomers, you are invited to write the names in the chat. Please welcome Tom Lockery.
Well, thank you. A lot's changed this year. A year ago, we were all Zoomers. Nobody was in the room. This was a dark, cold, empty room that night. But we did something very, very special that night. We raised for the minister's discretionary fund more than we ever had before. It was remarkable. And it wasn't just a little bit more, it was a lot more. I'm not exactly sure why. Maybe it had something to do with people not being out and going to restaurants or other things, but for whatever reason, it was a remarkable night for us. It really did make an enormous difference. In years past, Sean would hear about somebody who needed a little help, and maybe it was a bus pass or a card that would get them some groceries at the grocery store, and an exceptional one might be helping with a utility bill. But something changed with the generosity of everybody last year. We were able to help people sometimes with a month's rent or paying the deposit on an apartment to get them into it. And not just one monthly bus pass, but a bus pass for 6 months, that would get them back and forth to work and other places that they needed to be. It really made an enormous difference in a number of lives, none of which we really know anything about. That's between the minister and the people who are being helped. Tonight we have an opportunity to do that again, and I hope that you will join Nancy and I in being generous to the fund. And we're going to pass around a basket. It's going to come to you with our ushers helping. They're going to bring it to you. You don't need to touch it or anything, and put your money in it if you choose. But we have other ways that you can do it as well. And this I have to actually look at. So there are multiple ways in which, if you come to church every week, you've heard this many times, but there are multiple ways in which you can give to the Ministerial Discretionary Fund. One, you can mail a check. If you do that, please put MDF on it so we know it's going to the Ministerial Discretionary Fund. And also, if you mail it, send it to the P.O. Box, not directly here to the church. You can also go through our website as well, and you can use an app called Vanco Mobile. We've got a lot of people using Vanco Mobile now. So if you're in the room, the ushers are going to come around and offer the basket to you. You can also go home later on and do Vanco, or you can drop it into the basket as you're leaving. It doesn't have to be done right then. But know that when you do it, you are really helping some other people in the coming year. Maybe some of you have had some help from that in the past. There are others I know that are not here tonight, but would be if they could be. And I really appreciate the help that they've received. So I want to thank you all. I want to wish you all a Merry Christmas, and we'll see you on Sunday.
You know, Christmas started out a millennium ago as a way of honoring the birth of the Christian prophet and Savior, Jesus of Nazareth. It borrowed, as many of you know, from pagan traditions, incorporating things like Christmas trees, Yule logs, and even caroling. But over the millennia, it continued to evolve and change to meet the times. And nowadays, you can be any religion and celebrate Christmas, right? You can be Muslim, Jewish, Buddhist, pagan, Unitarian, Universalist, or you can be completely secular. Christmas is no longer just a Christian holiday, and it is everyone's right to enjoy the hope and joy of this time. But while Christmas has changed throughout the millennia, the magic, the spirit of Christmas has remained very similar. It's about that mystery, that hope and joy of a babe being born, of a world changed by mystery and wonder. And whether you're Christian, Jew, pagan, atheist, many of us try to capture that sense of that mystery and wonder and joy and hope in the Christmas season, because that's really what's at the heart of Christmas. You don't have to believe in a Savior to understand and embrace that. The traditions we carry forward or change as the generations come and go are the reflections of our desire to recreate the magic and spirit of Christmas. So however you celebrate Christmas, with presents or not, with a Christmas tree or not, honoring the baby Jesus or not, I hope you will embrace the beauty and reverence of this holiday. And here in this church, we embrace the beauty and reverence of this holiday by honoring all of the babies that we know that has been born this last year. So let us now name those babies. And I'd like to invite Gabrielle Block up here, who has served on our Children's Religious Education Committee, here to join me. She's served on it, I don't even know how many years, probably since her children were first here.
We Unitarian Universalists have a beautiful tradition of naming the babies. This is where we acknowledge the beautiful souls that have been born this year. For we Unitarian Universalists affirm that each night a child is born is a holy night.
So do you know of a baby born this year? I see we've got a bunch of people writing in the chat, and the roomers have already written them on slips of paper. If you like any other slips of paper, by all means, just raise your hand. The ushers will bring it to you. I think we're pretty set. So let us begin by singing. That we actually need to read the baby names first. So let's do that. So the first name I have is Maya Ray Morihiro.
Harley Ann Jacobs.
Owen Perez.
Isabel Christine Vargas.
Solomon Miller.
Oscar Thomas Moody.
Griffin Gass.
Hunter Trewick.
Navy Jernigan.
Lenora and Lysandra Brandon.
Maria Louisa, also known as Ma Lou.
Ludwig Wittig.
Osmos Fjord Colby.
Olson Kerr.
And Lily Meneg. Now let us sing.
Each night a child is born is a holy night, a time for singing, a time for wondering, a time for worshiping. Each night a child is born is a holy night.
The children come, and so they have been coming. Always in the same way they come, born of the seed of man and woman.
Each night a child is born is a holy night, a time for singing, a time for wondering, a time for worshiping. Each night a child is born is a holy night.
No angels herald their beginnings. No prophets predict their future courses. No wise men see a star to show where to find the babe that will save humankind.
Each night a child is born is a holy night, a time for singing, a time for wondering, a time for worshiping. Each night a child is born is a holy night.
Yet each night a child is born is a holy night. Fathers and mothers, sitting beside their children's cribs, feel glory in the sign of a new life beginning. They ask, where and how will this new life end? Or will it ever end?
Each night a child is born is a holy night, a time for singing, a time for wondering, a time for worshiping. Each night a child is born is a holy night.
Each night a child is born is a holy night, a time for singing, a time for wondering, a time for worshiping.
Each night a child is born is a holy night, a time for singing, a time for wondering, a time for worshiping. Each night a child is born is a holy night.
Tonight's prayer is Amazing Peace by Maya Angelou. Thunder rumbles in the mountain passes, and lightning rattles the eaves of our houses. Flood waters await us in our avenues. Snow falls upon snow, to avalanche. Over unprotected villages, the sky slips low and gray and threatening. We question ourselves. What have we done to so affront nature? We worry God. Are you there? Are you really? Does the covenant you made with us still hold? Into this climate of fear and apprehension, Christmas enters. Streaming lights of joy, ringing bells of hope, and singing carols of forgiveness high up in the bright air. The world is encouraged to come away from rancor, come the way of friendship. It is the glad season. Thunder ebbs to silence, and lightning sleeps quietly in the corner. Floodwaters recede into memory. Snow becomes a yielding cushion to aid us as we make our way to higher ground. Hope is born again in the faces of children. It rides on the shoulders of our aged as they walk into the sunsets. Hope spreads around the earth, brightening all things. Even hate, which crouches breeding in dark corridors. In our joy, we think we hear a whisper. At first, it is too soft, then only half heard. We listen carefully as it gathers strength. We hear a sweetness. The word is peace. It is loud now. It is louder. Louder than the explosions of bombs. We tremble at the sound. We are thrilled by its presence. It is what we have hungered for, not just the absence of war, but true peace. A harmony of spirit, a comfort of courtesies, security for our beloveds and their beloveds. We clap hands and welcome the peace of Christmas. We beckon this good season to wait a while with us. We, Baptist and Buddhist, Methodist and Muslim, say, come, peace. Come and fill us and our world with your majesty. We, the Jew and the Jainist, the Catholic and the Confucian, implore you to stay a while with us so we may learn by your shimmering light how to look beyond complexion and see community. It is Christmas time, a halting of hate time. On this platform of peace, we can create a language to translate ourselves and to each other. At this holy instant, we celebrate the birth of Jesus Christ. Into the great religions of the world, we jubilate the precious advent of trust. We shout with glorious tongues the coming of hope. All the earth's tribes loosen their voices to celebrate the promise of peace. We, angels and mortals, believers and non-believers, look heavenward and speak the word aloud, peace. We look at our world and speak the word aloud, peace. We look at each other, then into ourselves, and we say without shyness or apology or hesitation, peace, my brother. Peace, my sister. Peace, my soul.
So now is that time when we light our candles and we sing, and you're invited, the Zoomers, to light your candle now as the choir will be singing peace, peace, and then we'll join them in Silent Night. And Jan and Joelle and Judy will help us light candles here. Let us sing.
Peace on earth and good
when the song of the angels is stilled, when the star in the sky is gone, when the kings and princes are home, when the shepherds are back with their flock, the work of Christmas begins. To find the lost, to heal the broken, to feed the hungry, to release the prisoner, to rebuild nations, to bring peace among people, and to make music in the heart. As you leave this evening, so that we aren't lowering our masks and blowing out the candles, the ushers will help you extinguish your candle as you leave. This service is over. Let our service continue. Merry Christmas, everyone.